the session. Shall we appreciate CPF Fred? Karibu. Good afternoon, fellow accountants. Good afternoon one more time. Accountants are generally known for not returning greetings, isn't it? Is it our way of doing business? How are you today? You're much better. Now, as we get into the last phase of the program, as a country, we are faced with a challenge. And more often than not, we ask ourselves, where can we derive a solution to this challenge? Now, the session today, looking at accountability and taking a slightly different approach, we want to ask our CPA accountants to give us an appreciation of what their role is in driving accountability. As you sit down, remember, Article 1 of the Constitution vests the power to drive accountability generally, not in our elected officials, but in you, the citizens of this country. And as a professional accountant, then you get an additional layer of responsibility, because much of the information that are generated there, much of the reports that measure the level of accountability is right at your doorsteps. How do you think through your responsibility? How do you craft your reporting? How do you build accountability in your systems of governance? That is the gist of this session. As we begin, allow me to invite on stage the moderator for the session, Madam Joy Doreen Bira, who will take us through the discussion this afternoon. Then she will invite the panelists. And then I promise that this is going to be a very lively session. And we want maximum participation from the delegates as well. Remember, the power to drive accountability is not in the elected leaders. It is in you and me. We must join hands to ensure accountability of our systems. Thank you very much. Madam Joy Brin.
Good afternoon, everyone. So Fred said that it's very usual business for accountants not to revert greetings. I think it's actually, is it because you spend too much time reviewing numbers, and maybe sometimes the numbers end up making you less verbal and more into counting money and things like that? But where I come from, I think it's the opposite. If someone greets you, you must revert back. So good afternoon once again. That sounds better. My name is Joy Doreen Bira, and since I got here yesterday, I don't know if I should introduce myself as a business news anchor and reporter, because since I got here yesterday, people have been saying, are you the one that got arrested last time? So, yes, it's me, but I guess it comes with a job. So today we are going to be speaking about the duty of political leaders and, of course, the duty that they have to drive accountability and economic development. And so I'm going to quickly introduce our speakers, who are certified public accountants, but also are political leaders in the country today. So I'm going to start with certified public accountant, Honorable Thomas Modehu, who is a member of parliament for Wundanyi and also a gubernatorial candidate for Taita Taveta County. A round of applause for him. So he actually has quite a great profile, but they say politicians don't like being introduced. They like to introduce themselves. So we're going to give them time. Hope they don't put out their manifestos for the elections in 2017. So I would like to introduce our second speaker as well, who is a certified public accountant too, and member of parliament for Suba South. That is Honorable John Mbadi. Round of applause for him. Well, he's not just that. I'm sure you know he's the chair of the Orange Democratic Movement Party. And he has also served in various capacities, among them Assistant Minister in the Office of the Prime Minister. And finally, ladies and gentlemen, Certified Public Accountant, Honorable Amos Kimunya. I see the hands seem louder. He is actually a former Minister for Transport. He's also been a Minister for Lands and Housing, among other various capacities. He has served the cabinet for over 10 years in various capacities, but I'll also let him introduce himself at a later stage. And so we are going to have conversations on political accountability as a driver of economic development. As we all know, especially now that we have devolved system of governance, there have been issues of accountability at the county level and even at the national level. I'm sure you've seen sometimes when work is supposed to be done in one county and it's not done, the residents will blame the governor. And in another different county, when something is not done, the residents there or even the leaders will blame the national government. So is it that we as the public do not understand who to hold accountable? Maybe these are some of the questions we need to pose to our leaders this afternoon. So I'm just going to go straight ahead and join them. I don't know if I should sit right in the middle. That seems like I'll be distributing power. So let me go ahead and do that. Sound check. All right. So I don't know. I should start with the elders. So I will start from my extreme right. Honorable Modeu, maybe you will start by introducing yourself once again to the public so we can get to know some of the things we do not know about you that we need to know.
Thank you very much, and greetings to my colleagues, CPS. Thomas Mwadegu, my name. After finishing university, I worked to Central Bank, then moved to Industrial Development Bank, Financial Control, Housing, Finance. I've seen quite a number of colleagues who are living in Komorok, and I developed Komorok Phase 1 to 5. Then moved to Mombasa as the Group Financial Controller for the Mediterranean Shipping Group. Then jumped into politics. I decided not to continue concentrating on balancing and trial balances and cash flows. I decided to go into politics, and I was elected as a member of Parliament for Wundanyi. I'm doing my second term. I was the first chair of the vice chairman of the Public Investment Committee and Public Accounts Committee. Now I'm the Minority Chief Whip in Parliament, and I'm now seeking to be the governor of Taita Taveta County, and I will not let these accountants down. I'll go there to be an accountable governor. That is my pledge to my colleagues.
All right. And thank you so much for that background about yourself. Now to Honorable Amos Kimunya. There is quite a lot we do not know about you. I also heard that you are one of the presidents of the Institute of Certified Public Accountants of Kenya. Maybe there's more to you than we know. Why don't you tell us about that?
Thanks, Joy. Morning, everyone. I'm saying morning because we are supposed to be starting at 11. Then you overtook your tea. But afternoon. Now, I really don't need much of introduction. Let me just say, when I look at this sitting, the 2,500 sitting here, it takes me back to 30 years ago. Just 30 years in 1987, when I became a member of ISPAC. A number of you are still work in progress. Some are still at the production line. But it gives me great pleasure to be here among this great profession and having seen it grow. So I want to concentrate more from that professional perspective in terms of what I did in 1987. Was when I qualified as an accountant, registered as a member, and I believe 5 years after that, I was very busy here organizing as part of the committee, starting and getting very involved in the organizing of these annual seminars and other programs, eventually culminating in my serving as chairman of the institute. That was 2001 to 2002. That's the last time I served as a chairman. But have kept, that's 15 years ago, but have kept abreast, and I'm very excited. In between, I think based on what I did at the institute, people thought I could also serve at the national level, and I was tapped to go to Kipipiri, become member of parliament for Kipipiri. But before I could get to parliament, I had already been appointed into cabinet. So I became a minister before I became an MP by 3 days or so, and served for 10 years. Like Joy said, lands, housing, finance, trade, transport, and basically, looking at all the different aspects of government. I've also gone through various crucibles. Kimunya must go, you all remember all those things. Because I've been branded very arrogant. And these are things that come with the territory. When you're an accountant and you're tough and you hold your peace and say you cannot do this, you cannot compromise, everyone out there says, this guy is so arrogant. So if you're thinking of getting into public life, you must remember that when you hold very strong opinions on accountability, on getting things done in a certain way, you don't become very popular. And everyone then rallies around and tries to show why you must be removed. And the political situation, there is no 1 + 1 = 2. It's where the numbers to remove this guy. So I could go on and on, but this was an introduction. After that, I took a break in 2013. The people of Kipipiri decided they wanted to test somebody else. After 2 months, they were come back calling me that we made a mistake, can you please come back? So I've gone back, and they've given me 53% in the Jubilee nomination. So I'm hoping they'll just endorse that in August, then we can be back to representing the people and doing this in Parliament. But in between that, and I think that in between the two times, I decided to move into academia, and I'm currently pursuing my doctorate in business administration on finance. So you'll see me either in Parliament or in lecture halls. That's my new life, to mentor young accountants, young professionals in finance, and that's my commitment to this country. So I will look forward to working with many of you, whether in Parliament or within the profession going forward.
Thank you very much, Honorable. It sounded like a speech, though. So we're now going to move on to Honorable John Mbadi. We need to know more about what you do beyond the politics. I think sometimes when we get to know politicians, we forget about everything else because now we start to question them, and there's possibly more to you than meets the eye.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, fellow accountants. Speaking immediately after Amos Kimunya is very difficult with a long CV. But what gives me confidence is when he started speaking, he went back to 1987. And so I got encouraged because I was just in Form 1. So really, do I need to compete you? All right. I think, let me start by saying my name is John Mbadi. I think many of you know me. At least that one is standard. Amos Kimunya, Thomas Madegu, John Mbadi. The name is standard. There's really no exaggeration. Immediately I finished my first degree at the University of Nairobi in 1996. That is a BCom accounting option. I worked with University of Nairobi again in the finance department for a couple of years, 7.5. Then I went to NGO World, where I worked as finance director for one of the NGOs operating in Kenya, but really not operating in Kenya, headquartered in Kenya, but operating in South Sudan, Somalia. It's called Medea East Africa, which has its headquarters in Switzerland. I worked there for 3.5 years before I finally decided to go into politics. And I went for what used to be called Gwasi constituency. The constituency pretty remains the same in terms of everything, geographical area, but it has changed names 3 times. The first time I went in as the MP for Gwasi. Then in the last election it was Suba. This coming election it is Suba South. So I'm going to have, I think, a distinct history of representing one constituency with different names. The first one, I think, in this country. I think that is something to clap for. So in my first time in Parliament, when I served the backbench for over 4 years, during which time I was a member of Public Investment Committee. I was also a member of the Budget and Appropriations Committee. And then finally, I was also a member of the Constitutional Implementation Oversight Committee. But towards the end of the sunset period of last Parliament, I got the privilege of serving in government, though briefly, for about 6 months as Assistant Minister in the Office of the Prime Minister. In fact, I used to call myself Assistant Prime Minister because there was no minister in that office. So I was basically Assistant Prime Minister. Unfortunately, we lost power in 2013. I imagined if we didn't lose power, probably I was cut up for bigger things. Actually, I was eyeing the Ministry of Finance as a cabinet secretary. Unfortunately, we lost power. And so I had again to go back as a MP for Soba and back to the backbench. Right now, I'm a member of the Budget and Appropriations Committee. I'm also a member of the Public Accounts Committee. But fortunately, again, for me, in 2015, I was made, and I'm very cautious, I was not elected. I was made chairman, national chairman of Orange Democratic Movement. And I'm still the chairman of the party. I've just been nominated as the ODM candidate for Soba South parliamentary seat. I'm likely to serve my final term as member of the National Assembly. And possibly 2022, Honorable Mwadegu, if you will still be governor. We may be both governors. Really, is there anything else to say? I think I should stop there because really, you asked a question about what else do I do. I am married with 2 children.
Okay, that actually does it.
Yeah, my daughter and a son. Yes. So that's all. There's nothing else that I do.
All right, so enough with the introductions, I guess. I probably should have just gotten on to the questions, because when I asked you to introduce yourselves, it turned into speeches. But let's move on. You are all forgiven for that. So, you know, we're here to basically talk about political accountability as a driver of economic development. And so I've been reading quite a bit about the different indices that are there around economic accountability and public accountability and political accountability. But there's one that actually does stand out. That is the Open Budget Index that actually found that national budgets in 74 of the 94 countries surveyed failed to meet the most basic requirements of accountability and transparency. And that means that we're looking at both the national governments and the county governments as well. And I'm sure you have all been watching the news and you've been seeing how various leaders are being put to task to account for various amounts of money. But at the end of the day, are we aware that it is us as the public, as the people, who should be putting these political leaders to account? And so would now like to find out from leaders to find out whether or not they are doing enough to drive these conversations. And seeing as we have certified public accountants with us here as leaders as well, I would like to pose the first question to Honorable Thomas, who I think is best placed to talk about whether or not delegates delegation of responsibilities around decision making, policy implementation, automatically open the possibility of significant efficiencies and corruption among political practitioners? Because I think this is one of the biggest challenges that we see in the country today.
Thank you very much. Let me just make one observation. I suppose the panel were not meant to intimidate me. This is my chairman, ODM. He can kick me out of the party if I misbehave. Kimunya was my former chairman, ISPAC. But all the same, let's put it this way. Who is responsible? Who is the politician? Is it us or the voters, the assessors? What do they expect from us? Accountability. Account for what? Resources that are at our disposal. What does the law say? Who is supposed to implement the law? Is it us, the practicing politicians, or they are supposed to see to it that the law is implemented? In this country, Kenya, we as politicians have been given the mandate by the people to do whatever we are doing on their behalf. Technically, we are their agents. They are the principals. Principals are always accountable for the actions of the agents. Have Kenyans taken leaders to task? And that's why I'm saying it's wrong. A, B, C, D. But Kenyans, for some strange reasons, have been a bit timid. They'll complain today, tomorrow they go down. But we as leaders also, have we taken our responsibilities seriously? Have we gone to these positions with the intention of turning the country around or outright theft? And I'm not ashamed to say, quite a number of us leaders have gone there with one agenda: to steal. We have gone there with one agenda to do what? To steal. And it is in the minds of Kenyans that most of the leaders are corrupt leaders. It is in the mind of Kenyans that they have not done their work. Now, let me put a rider to this. We have a responsibility as Kenyans. This is our country. We are supposed to oversee that the Constitution is implemented. The leaders account for each and every resource at their disposal. The laws which are there, the institutions which are supposed to pursue the culprits, have they done it to the satisfaction and to the expectation of Kenyans? My answer is no. And I stand here, or I sit here in front of my fellow professionals to assure them that I will not appear before the Senate charged or accused of embezzlement of public funds.
All right.
I will not.
Well, great. You mentioned that when you're into these positions, they go with one agenda, and that is to steal. I'm hoping that doesn't include you. But then again...
Some, not all.
Yes. And again, I'm hoping that doesn't include you. But then again, it sort of appears that during the campaign period or even before, these aspirants, or when they are aspirants, they sort of tend to take on the civil society or activism trend, where they are putting leaders in the current leadership to account. They want them to account for resources, they want them to account for funds, misappropriation. And then when these aspirants get into the House, it's a different story altogether, because now actually, this steam that you have before you get into this position simmers, and it simmers either because the leaders get into the same system of stealing in courts, and then we do not know how to account for the resources anymore, because these leaders who went in with the urge to create change or to transform sort of tend to now get simmered under the same leadership of theft and misappropriation. How would you react to that?
I think we have to accept one reality. You realize some of the people who are singing with you, let's crucify them, they themselves are thieves.
So we turn around and say, you want to pin on this one? You realize he has stolen a few millions of shillings. You go to the other side, and they are all around you. So you are actually held hostage. Now, I go back to what Amos said. He said, if you are principled and you are tough and you maintain your stand, you will be crucified. And that is the position. Politicians will go around with all sorts of people and will sing all the songs that will perform A, B, C, D. The activists will be with you. And at that time, they are supporting you. But get into the office. You try to touch this one, he's your uncle, he's the one who's singing, let's crucify them. He has stolen a few billion shillings. You go to the other side, a former girlfriend, she's the one who has done all these messes in Central Bank. You go all over the place, they have surrounded you. What do? You are a prisoner. But time has come. Time has come for us to walk the talk. Time has come for somebody to say, enough is enough. And I'm not saying this to please my fellow accountants. I think if people follow some of our history, we have been known to maintain a particular stand. And that is why some of us are very proud. We have no other issues to debate about other than saying, look here, you are responsible for the refunds, the activists of you, just do it, irrespective of the consequences.
Right.
But I must say 2 + 2 is 4 to the accountants. To the politician, it has never remained 4. Because there are other things that you don't foresee. They just come into play. And that's why at times you have assassinations. That's why at times you have people rioting, telling you have to go out. We remember one of the governors who dared the MCAs. Only one governor in Kenya at one particular point dared the MCAs, let's go back to the public. And they feared because he took a stand. How many of us are here to take a stand? That is the position.
All right. Thank you so much. You know, in line with the same, and possibly different speakers would also want to chip in, besides the control mechanism of regular elections, you know, because when one leader doesn't perform, then you either impeach them, you know, they're kicked out, or in the next election you vote them out. Is this the only way to create change, to transform our leaders and hold them accountable? Or do we have other mechanisms that we can explore? Honorable John Mbadi.
Thank you very much. First of all, let me start by saying that the power that elected leaders have is a delegated power. You go to the Constitution, the first article of the Constitution says that the sovereign power is with the people of Kenya, and it is delegated to these institutions, the parliament, the executive, and the judiciary. Now, the power that the so-called leaders have is actually a delegated power that the people can take anytime they want and exercise it directly, because the Constitution says that power can be either exercised directly by the people themselves or through these democratically elected, so to speak, leaders. But I wanted to say that the problem that we face, and it is not just in this democracy of ours, young as it is, or I really don't know whether I should still call our democracy young, but our democracy is not the only one faced with this. It is the process of electing our leaders. We need to interrogate the process of election. How do we get our leaders to where they are? Is the electorate well informed on what they need to look for as they go into electing these leaders? And I want to give you an example. If you are electing a member of parliament today, and we are victims, all of us, including the educated ones, some of whom even sit here, do we use the right parameter to get to office the people we want to get to those offices? For example, a member of parliament has distinct responsibilities. A member of parliament is supposed to legislate, oversight, and represent. But you find even the most educated, even with the current constitution, which defines local development, so to speak, that is a function of the county government, but you still find educated people saying this one has to be voted out because he talks too much at the national level, but there are no roads, there is no water. Is that the work of a member of parliament? So electing these people is a challenge. That is number one. Number two is the method of electing them. We glorify thieves in this country, because how many of us would look at a thief who has just stolen money and has bought a very big car, Range Rover, and says, hey, this one is doing very well. Doing very well in what? In stealing your money. And then you complain once you put him into position of leadership. How many poor people, so to speak, with integrity, as the Honorable Moskemunya was talking about, would get elected into positions of leadership? Now, to get to your question and just to summarize, you are concerned whether this is the only way through which we can hold our leaders accountable through regular elections. It is not the only one. And I think the people of Kenya realize this. That's why Article 248 of the Constitution was created, to create commissions. Kenya has decided that these bodies, the executive, the judiciary, and legislature, which should actually counter-check each other, the three institutions, the government was split into three. It was the executive, the judiciary and parliament were supposed to check each other. But because Kenyans realized that that was not enough, we decided to give ourselves again another fourth arm of government, which we call commissions and independent institutions. We have very many constitutions, I don't want to even go into the details, which are supposed to now help us check or hold these leaders to account. And we have the Office of the Auditor General and the Office of the Budget, Controller of Budget. So we created other institutions, but as to whether they are functioning, that is a subject for discussion another day. But above all, we have the civil society, the church. These institutions are also supposed to function to continuously, because you can't wait for 5 years to hold your elected leader accountable. There was a provision in law in the Constitution that we could recall our elected leaders. But unfortunately for the people of Kenya, we did not tighten it. We left it again to the same leader to go and legislate to operationalize it. We made it possible. You cannot call Mbadi and if I underperform in Suba. So that recourse is not there. What is there for the 5 years as you wait to vote me out is to use the civil society, the church, and the commissions.
So is there a dilemma where we are seeing that maybe the public who vote specific leaders into leadership positions are less informed about their rights, and then on the other hand, we are electing into leadership positions leaders who lack the skill, leaders who lack or who are not professional and are just voted on popular vote and are not going to deliver at the end of the day?
It could be both. It could be lack of information and it could also be carelessness. There are people who are less informed, but there are people who are just careless. You will discuss with many professionals here, and I'm sure once we finish, we'll have some informal discussion. You will hear my fellow colleagues, professional accountants, saying, politics is a dirty game, I don't want to get involved. Now, if you've already made politics a dirty game and it controls the entire economy, it's all politics. The policies that are made control and dictate what you do as a professional. Then you are careless. I mean, negligence by professionals. Many professionals here don't even vote. That is why you find many people don't even bother to campaign in Karen if you are looking for votes for Langata constituency. You go to Kibra and look for votes there, because these people will just give you pleasantries. You'll talk out in the restaurants, but at the end of it all, the people who make decisions are the Kibera people. So I think as a country we need to take serious interest on how do we get these policy makers to be people who can make policies for this country. We legislate on taxation, we legislate on so many things that affect both micro and macroeconomic fundamentals of the country, but you call politics a dirty game. You don't want to join politics. It is not a must that all of you will have to be in parliament. If, after all, we can only be 290 members representing constituencies and 47 women reps, and a few, if you're lucky, 12 in the National Assembly. If you're lucky, know some leadership of the political parties like myself,
Yeah.
and you get nominated. But that is just very limited positions. So I would urge that you don't have to be elected, but you can influence, you can control who gets to those offices. At least
Right.
that one, that ability and power you have.
So you actually agree, but that there is less information, both from the professional policymakers or skilled policymakers and with the public as well.
I agree.
Great. Would you like to add something, Honorable Kimunya? It's working.
Buddy made sure I was switched off in the process. But it's a serious matter, and I want to ask a question. You are voters. How many of you know the name of your member of the county assembly? How many have the number of your MCA? You can count the number of hands. What does that tell you? We as a professionals went, we voted for people at the county level where they are supposed to be oversighting the government. But we don't know who we voted, we don't have their contact, we don't contact them, we don't know what they are doing, we don't influence them, and when they mess up, we wait for 5 years to kick them out. That's an ex post situation. Within the 5 years, your taxes have gone. The services you wanted, the roads you wanted repaired at the county level. I'm talking of at the level where you feel the services. Where you have the roads, the health, the agriculture, the industrialization, job creation is at the county level. Now, if you don't even know the policy makers at that point, we're missing a big opportunity. In 1990s, to ensure accountability to those levels. But at the political accountability level, where we are holding our leaders, who are the agents of us, the voters, to then go and influence the real agents, who are the people in government, because it's a multi-level. If we don't have access to our first agent, how will they reach the real agent? Because it's within the principal agency, the agency-theory relationship. You know, simplistically, we are saying the population is the principals, the leaders are the agents. But the leaders are different levels. Vertically, you can say yes, you have the voter and the government, the executive. In between, you have the member of parliament who represent Wanjiku Wazetwa to hold the agent into account. But even within themselves, they also have their own accountability.
Mm-hmm.
Within government, there is also the same accountability. Mm-hmm. So it's a very complex issue, but I believe we have an opportunity. I talked of in 1992, we were talking of hundreds of accountants. We are now 21,000. 21,000 voices talking about misuse of funds is a big voice. And that voice should be loud enough to help the poor Wanjikos who don't care. All they want is how much unga is being distributed, how many lessons are being given. I went through the campaign here today. In fact, I was asking who is giving T-shirts, who is giving lessons. You know, we've seen for ISPAC, it's gone to that level.
Yeah.
And we are keen to even know the leaders coming into council. Let's have the same passion on the people coming onto the national political platform.
And that is on issues to do with integrity and how exactly we need to go about it. But then again, we've identified a problem. We know where the problem is. So what other measures, what other mechanisms can we put in place to hold these policymakers, these leaders to account, if not through the regular elections and, you know, through the civil society, just like Honorable Mbadi has said, what other structures can we have in place that we can realize in the shortest time, considering we still seem to be at different levels of leadership at the moment?
Thank you. I may take long on this, but I would try to be brief. When we as a country, developed vision, our national vision 2030, our guiding. It doesn't matter whether you're in government, whether you're in the opposition, is our national vision that we are aspiring to as Kenyans. It envisaged we will have economic growth, which is again the byproduct we are looking in all this political accountability. We will have the social pillar that looks at the social cohesion and all that. But the third pillar, and that's what we're discussing today, the political pillar, envisages a situation where you have the structures in place, political parties that are issue-based. Right now we are seeing the issues of people becoming independent instead of coalescing together so that we go to, you know, an issue based rather than personalities. We have, first of all, from that national framework, we must start thinking of what is the vision we as a country want to see in terms of our national values. Have we started that conversation in terms of what are the national values that will put us together as Kenyans, so that as we sit here, I'm in Jubilee, these two guys are in ODM, but we are sitting here discussing as fellow accountants, because what brings us together is our common bond that we are professionals. Can we see that cascading across many other debates, so that as people sit, they don't think of bashing one another politically and forget that there are some underlying fundamentals that bring Kenya together to demand accountability, regardless of who is in power and who is in the opposition.
Great.
The second thing I want to look at is, this is an agency problem. People are rational utility maximizers. Everyone has some self-interest. People have access to information that other people don't have. And everyone wants to use that information for personal good. Now, the only way you can stop that is through the governance structures that are to put in place to ensure the members of public have as much information that is accurate in terms of the accountability, in terms of getting to know what are the leaders doing, and that information must be accurate. Which brings into equation the role of the accountants. Because that's where we are the auditors. We are the ones who actually get all that information, prepare it up front, prepare it at the end of it all. We need to simplify it and get it to the people as much as possible. I'm looking through the developments taking place within the IFRS. You're seeing the new, all these disclosures, the key audit matters and all that are coming on board. It's all part of helping that. But is it helping the regular guy who invested in some shares of a company stock exchange and get a 40-page document as a set of financial statement, right? Who have no idea what they mean, yeah? 10 pages of that is about explanation of what has happened with whistleblowers. Why don't you start thinking of whistleblowing within the framework of the professional body, where you're protected, so that people who know what is happening can feed it into ISPAC. ISPAC feeds it on to us. We are able to then follow it up while insulating the individual. Because once we have those kind of structures, we will be able to capture things before, to nip them in the bud before they happen. Right. And the other bit is obviously Honorable Degu will become governor, and we wish him well. He'll start being fought because he's an accountant. How do we help some of those people by actually bringing out the facts and distinguishing it from propaganda? Because so long as we start saying he has stolen some money today and the papers pick it, by the time he clears himself, the damage is done. And political capital has been built out of it instead of the social capital that would have been done to actually insulate the people like that. So there's so many things we can do, and I do hope as a result of this we'll probably write out some of those things and share in terms of how you can get better engaged.
All right. Yes. Probably before you even get into that, we've also seen stories besides the Kimunya Must Go hashtag. We've also had incidences where leaders have actually paid off journalists to cover up stories or to portray them in a certain light, and that in a way also has affected political accountability and transparency. So probably all of you can maybe speak on that as you actually add on to what he had to say.
Thank you. I just wanted to add on what Honorable Kimunya said about the Institute. We have quite a number of us, members of the Institute, who are chief officers in various county governments. They have been part and parcel of the message we are seeing in these counties. Has the Institute done anything about them? And the Institute is aware. It is kept quiet. And that is where we have to start. Our own members. Some of them, we have already made pronouncements on the same. But for some strange reasons, our Institute has remained shy. Time is up. Time is up for the Institute. Come out in the open and make a stand. If our members are stealing, let them move out of the profession. We cannot have them, and the Institute continues shielding them, and will expose some of them if the Institute does not take any steps on our members. We know them in various counties. Let me go back to the reporters.
Right.
We are here. We know what reporters can do. They can build you up, and tomorrow they can bring you down.
Yep.
So more often than not, politicians have had a tendency of ensuring that nothing negative, either about them or anything that is associated with them or the system which they serve, goes out there. I tend to think there are certain things that impact negatively on certain individuals or on the government, and the government will equally try to bribe them as much as possible. We are aware of it. The question is, what do we do about it? The moral aptitude in most of us is questionable. But where are we going to get these angels? Do we have them? Or is it the latitude? We are talking about the oscillation, the latitude. Up to what level do we tolerate one another? I'm not talking of 100% perfect situation. We are looking at a fair state of affairs that we shouldn't continue bribing these people. Even going to some of these places where you are allowed by the journalists, either in the TV or in the radio stations and what have you, at times, even for you to be covered, you have to bribe them. Where do we stop? Who is gentlemen? Let's all team out together and we'll change the face of this country. We have the capacity, we have the ability, we can do it. Why can't we do it, my dear brothers and sisters? Join me, join us.
All right. Honorable Mbadi, you wanted to add something?
Maybe quickly, just
Briefly.
to add
Yes.
briefly two things. Number one, I want to get back to the institutes, just like my colleagues have said, and I want to leave that aspect which Mwadegu has actually talked about very eloquently, about shielding, protecting our members who are involved in embezzlement of funds or corruption of whatever nature. But I want to go a step further. That I want to give you this example. When a Chief Justice is targeted unfairly by the system because of good work done, I'm just giving that example, or Deputy Chief Justice, lawyers will come out very, very strongly. But when Auditor General of a country is targeted unfairly because of the work he's doing, maybe unearthing or coming up with reports that are not palatable to the executive, what as accountants do we do? I'm just asking, are you quiet or you have talked? This is a very recent incident about our Auditor General, which it may be my personal opinion, but I think he was targeted unfairly. So we needed to have moved quickly, like lawyers would have done, to investigate the Chief Justice. We would need to move quickly as professional accountants also to investigate. Let's not just defend, but investigate first. If we find it's unfairly targeted, then we talk loudly and protect the integrity of accountants in this country. But finally, on the issue of reporting, and I don't want to just pin it on our reporters because they're just part of a system that is rotten. The media people is part of a system that is rotten. Look at Kenya like
Partly, not entirely. I'm just defending my
No, but
profession.
anyway, that is debatable. But I would tell you where we have reached. I think I would not be very far from saying that our system is not really pleasing. If it was food to be eaten, we would reconsider eating it. But anyway, let me not go to politics so much. Let me leave it there and maybe step back and
Yes.
allow me to say this. Yeah, that look at Kenya. Take Kenya like that company where you work, like the institution where you work. There is a culture in your organization. If the culture is anti-corruption culture, starting from the top, people will not steal in that organization. But if that culture is not there, there will be theft. So Kenya, the problem is the culture that we have inculcated in this country. We have nurtured a culture where theft is not, we only talk about it, that it is bad. But in real sense, we almost all glorify it. And so in my view, I think this starts from the top.
Right. It starts from the top. All right. Very
Yes.
briefly, Honorable Kimunya.
Yes, thank you. I think I agree with my colleagues. And when talking the role of the media in all this, I did raise earlier, within the agency relationship, the biggest problem is information. And if that information is going to be delivered in a skewed manner, right? It influences the decision making, and even by the people are making the decision on whether they should continue with one person, with one agent or another, they are receiving from a skewed perspective. So the media have a role to play. But even as we're discussing this, you realize that political accountability is not just about corruption. Mm-hmm. It's not just about money that is lost. It's about promises that were made to the electorate, and have they been delivered? Because people could sit in office, and we have seen a bit of that. We've seen Wananchi have been denied their services by governors who wanted to play it safe, by cabinet secretaries who wanted to play it safe, by permanent secretaries who wanted to play it safe, because they don't want to spend, because they'll be accused of a corruption, so they sit, and then the money is returned to the treasury. That is a denial of the services that are promised to the people because of the fear. So I think it's even looking at this political accountability, and that's why I said as ISPAC, let us start interrogating those promises, those campaign manifestos. Let us look, for example, I've seen a huge document that's been prepared by the Jubilee government, in terms of the projects that have been delivered. These were the promises, this was being delivered. Look at the Presidential Delivery Unit website. You see all that. I would like to see accountants interrogating any of those things and saying, is that all we have been paying money for? Yeah? Is that, what else were we promised that has not been delivered? What did the opposition promise to give to Kenyans, and have they delivered? Then we will start holding our leaders into account, not just those who are in government, but those who are in the opposition. Because everyone makes a promise in terms of what they're going to do. And when we start on that journey, we will be helping our country move forward in terms of political accountability. Not just looking at who has stolen, who has taken what money. There are institutions for that. There's the police, there's the anti-corruption, there's all those things. Never mind that, they are just tying themselves in a rope and all that. And then the other thing I'd like to ask for, and I hope we can agitate for this from ISPAC. And I know Justice Ojong was here. I missed his session, and I would not have wanted to bring this when he was here. Our court systems, are they an impediment or a catalyst in ensuring accountability? When you have cases dragging for years, until people forget, until even witnesses forget, and they are coming and say, that happened 5 years ago, I can't even remember what you're telling me to do. Why can't we have efficiency in delivery, so that if I'm accused of something, I would want to be accused, test tried, and cleared or jailed within a month, not dragging for 4 years, because that now stops being fair action. And that's what our constitution envisaged. We still have people on Golden Bag. We started in 1992.
Yes.
That's 20 years ago. We have cases on Angolo Singong, never mind that all those contracts were signed from 1997. And the matters are being prosecuted 20 years after. Who will remember what was happening? Some of the people have retired, some have died. And I think those are some of the issues that we now have to start to get there. And the media can help in bringing up some of those issues. In this electronic age,
Yes.
we now know you say this and you had shown the next day saying what you had said earlier.
Yeah.
So we can quickly do that, and as this back, I believe our role is let's ensure the information that goes out there is factual, be it from the media or be it from the politicians or be it from the public. And then we'll start knowing, separating the wheat from the chaff.
Great. So thank you so much to all our speakers. Now I would like to give an opportunity to the rest of us to pose some questions to our three speakers. We'll take about 3 questions and then we'll have their closing remarks. So let's see, the gentleman over there. We need, no, not you. Yes, the gentleman in a blue cap. And I think we need a lady in between the 3 questions. Let me see. Okay. The gentleman in a red shirt at the back will come second, and I think a lady. Yes, and we can have a lady as well pose a question to balance the gender. Yes. So we'll start with 1. Yes, right here, and 2 at the back, and 3 right here in the 3rd row. So make them brief and precise.
Thank you. My name is CPA Wilson Wambia. The first question to all of you. What really happens when you get into politics? What really happens? If there's somebody who forces you to do things otherwise, especially Kimunya. Next question is, when the judge was here, we posed the same question. Is the court system an hindrance? He explained, and we realized there is a blame game shift. I remember we were told clearly that the investigating bodies do not give enough evidence to the court. They can't make a decision. But let me come back to Wadegu. You explained clearly that we go into politics, we have people of our own who come and mess and we are in jail. Why are we practicing nepotism by picking people that we know we cannot jail if they mess up? And I'm very sure you're going to be a governor, and one thing we will hear is, hey, Wadegu has somebody who has come in to control the finances for you. Now, coming to the last question on corruption, I wanted to pose this question. We've talked about corruption all these years when I was a young boy, and now I'm catching up. Is this corruption a good thing at some point? Thank you. I want that explanation.
Okay, we'll have the second question. I think, yes. Your names first.
I am CPA Lea Samoe. Thank you very much, all members, for your presentation. It was a very nice presentation. My question actually narrows down to Honorable Kimunya. We understand that land is an emotive factor of production. And indeed, Honorable Mbandi mentioned that you form other bodies to check on the balances when you were not able to check as the parliament. Sure, you form National Land Commission. Under National Land Commission, there was a body, in fact a strong body, called County Land Management Board. This was formed under Section 16 of the National Land Commission Act. Later on, after 2 years, the same act was amended and replaced by committees. The first board actually was very effective because it had adopted ADR in sorting out land issues. It was very effective to Wanjiku, sorting out public land dispute, but unfortunately, it was caught by removing that section. Though the case is in court, I wish Honorable Kimunya, you comment on the same, the formation and the solution. And under my personal experience, I do request the honorable members, when you go to Parliament, reconsider lifting the first section of County Land Management Board.
Yeah, that as ISPAC we support what that office is doing, and if the threshold of removing the Auditor General is achieved, then they can do it. But because of the work that the office is doing, as ISPAC we made it very clear, not just to hands in the county governments to be members of ISPAC. I think it will go a very long way in achieving what we are looking for. Because you can only discipline members who are in your register. So many of them, of course, when they commit those financial mismanagement, you find your hands are tied because they are not your members. So one of the strategies is to make sure that we get support from Parliament through our CPS. I'm sure when Kimunya goes back there, you'll be able to push some bills so that at least we have that implemented. Then lastly, the review of the Accountant Act is something that definitely also requires support, because at the moment, ISPAC doesn't have investigative powers. And you'll find you may have very clear cases. The only thing you do with the requirements that we have in the Act is to maybe suspend a member. But when maybe we have investigative powers, then it will have some impact in terms of disciplining members. But those are some of the take-homes which I believe my colleagues will take up in Parliament. Thank you.
Thank you so much. The third question, we're going to take the third question now. There's a gentleman in a red shirt at the back. Yes. Yeah.
I'm CPA Koech. My question goes to the honorable members. We have heard your call that you are really urging us to be part and parcel of politics of this Kenya. And you have put it and made it clear that for you to be in any position in this country, you need to be connected. But of my concern, and maybe this is what I'm asking, is that why is the requirements, the minimum requirements for one to be an MP is just you can read and write? Do you expect a professional to come and compete in such a field? You are the people who made these decisions, and you're looking up upon you again to rectify it. Kindly.
Thank you so much. I think we'll now hand it back to the honorable speakers. We'll start with Honorable Kimunya. Please keep it brief.
Let me start with a very easy one, sir. Koech, you raised, indeed, the requirement for being a member of Parliament is just for now. Section 22 of the Election Act has been already changed to require not just for MPs, but even MCAs must have a degree. But because it was only changed this year, you cannot then tell people to have a degree in 3 months. Otherwise, everyone will bring a degree of questionable, a 3-month degree. But that has been suspended. But for the elections of 2022, they will need to have a degree. But all the people to be nominated will have to have a degree. So that's already been taken care of. And it's something that we started even in 2012, but had to be suspended to not to be seen as if you are doing it to disenfranchise a certain group of people. So that's good. That's good news. Coming back to Leah, so I can quickly go through the questions. Yes, land issue, very emotive. The structures required to manage land in this country, even as 2000, now there's a Jojo Commission, then there's a Dongo Commission that fed into the Bomas debate. And as a result of the 2005 debate, we actually came up with the National Land Commission and National Land Policy. I was Minister for Lands then, so I know the process we went through and the rationale. And I can say, because I don't want to touch on the matters in court, that there's still a lot of work in progress. There's a lot of work to be done on sorting out the management of the land sector. You've seen some of the shenanigans that have been taking place, again, within the National Land Commission. So again, it's not necessarily by moving that way, we are getting things better. There's work in progress, and we will look through that. And I think the challenge, you've thrown it to the right people. When you get to Parliament, let us look at how we harmonize that resource and the management of the national land resource from the national level, the county level, and how you ensure there's proper separation between what is done by the executive, what is done by the commission, and what is done at the local level. And now I move to my issues.
What happens when you get into politics?
Yes,
that's what
I know. I have them.
Yep.
Now, what happens when you get in politics? Nothing. You still remain yourself. And I think if you need to look at things, you need to understand some undercurrents that perhaps don't come into the public domain. Like I said earlier, when you hold strong positions, people brand you. This is the most arrogant. Everyone throws into the social media. This is the most corrupt minister. And it's branded. Everyone looking at you starts looking at it from that lens. It doesn't matter what you've done. It doesn't matter what you say. It doesn't matter what facts you give. Mm-hmm. But because in this country we believe in propaganda more than the facts. Let me give an example. When I lost the elections in 2013, and I considered defeating Kipipiri, one of the media houses put out a very big article, said Kemunya calls his people thankless. That I wrote a letter to the people of Kipipiri telling them they're thankless. It's stuck. I've been asking, where is this letter that I wrote? How do you write a letter to 200,000 people? You must have addressed it to a specific individual who can say, this is the letter that Kemunya wrote. But somebody wrote it in the media, and because it was in the media, and people believed the media, so that became the story. I was told I sought the Grand Regency. We went through a process. The Regency is still there. It was renamed to Laiko. It's still standing there. It's still owned by the owners. Nobody has followed it up. But immediately I was kicked out of the treasury. The debate stopped. Right? So you must be able to distinguish between the shenanigans that are thrown, the propaganda that's thrown, and the actual activities when you hold on to some of the things. And all that fight on the body, you remember, was because I said members of parliament must start paying taxes. I proposed that in the 2008 budget. And I became the target. But luckily, I pushed it through and we got it into the constitution. And now, members of parliament, like everyone else, pay their taxes. It was not just members of parliament, it was also the judges. Right? I was the only one in independent Kenya who was daring enough to go and say members of parliament and holders of constitutional offices will pay taxes like everyone else.
Right.
Is that change? So, whatever happened, I think I brought positive change into government. I did not change and haven't changed, and I can tell you that for sure. Now, quickly, looking through, yes, the judge may have said the courts are not to blame. But the courts can force investigators to speed up things. Right? And I believe there's a debate we don't want to get here. But I know investigation in this country is shoddy. And because they know that, and they don't have people to come and give evidence, then every time you go on an appearance, and I've been a victim of this for the last 3 or 4 years on a matter I don't quite never understand. But there's nobody to give evidence. So you have to keep on, come after 3 months, after 3 months, after 3 months, hoping that eventually it will die off, and you are told there's no evidence, you are free. But in the meantime, you've been messed up. So that's why I'm taking that stance. Corruption, is it good or bad? Right? I know there's been arguments that corruption fuels the economy and all that. But remember, corruption, when you're talking corruption, we are talking of somebody taking advantage of the opposition to shortchange you, to extract some rents from you, to force you to pay for what you should be getting as a matter of right. So it can never be good and should never be condoned by anyone. It should be condemned in its totality. Now, see what's happening in the Huduma centers that have been started in the last couple of years. When you walk into the Huduma center, you get services. Yet, if you went to the registrar person to look for your ID, you are told it will take 4 months or 4 weeks. You walk into the Huduma center, you get the same service in 1 week or something because of the transparency that has been created around that. And I think the more we get in terms of this innovative and move from the old to the new, it will take time, it's expensive, right? It will require, many more people acting on it, but corruption must be condemned. And some of the guys who talk most, these NGOs, these right activists, yeah, who they are saying now they have got a red card of some, I don't know how many politicians they want bad. Ask them when they accounted last for the funds they're using, right? But they are shielding their own weaknesses by shouting most, oh, Badi has not accounted, Mwadegu has not done this, Kemunya has not done this. But ask them, they themselves, who they even account to, right? They don't have structures. But that's the kind of thing that in between we get messed up because the activists are on the street, because the politicians are at one another. If I wanted to bash these two guys, I would be saying ODM is the most corrupt, they'll be saying GBD is the most corrupt, and we'll have a debate here that will be unending. Nobody is providing facts, as well, and we'll not get into that.
In the interest of time. All right, Honorable Modeo. Would like to hear your remarks as well. Somebody asked, why are we practicing nepotism?
To leave that to the end, why we are practicing it. But I was more interested in the question that was asked, the first question, and to specific element to me. What happens when you get into politics? Kemunya said nothing happens. I'll tell you a lot happens. When we get there, a lot happens. And let me be frank. I'm a married man, right? 5 children. They have their expectations from me. You get into politics early in the morning when you wake up. A multitude of people are outside your house. They have their expectations. You rush to attend to them. You leave your children there, you leave your wife there. Or until if your wife is just 2 or 3 months in marriage with you, or 1 year, 3 years, you have not cemented your marriage. I can assure you, ultimately, sorry for the ladies, sorry for the gentlemen, you may have a risk of ultimate having children sired by your neighbors, right? You are too busy into other things.
Is that part of the promise?
No, it's not part of the promise. All what we are saying is that a lot of things happen to politicians. Let's be honest, let's be frank. 2, expectations. Harambes. You know, we just passed a law the other day that you will not, members of parliament or anybody seeking an elective post should not be involved in that. Why did we pass that law? Because everybody will be coming for money. School fees, hostel, name it. Where do you get it from? Kimunya made sure our salaries are taxed. And I'm glad he has confessed he did a good job. I quite agreed with him. Where do you get all this money to keep on dishing out those goodies? You find MPs now going for contracts, going for shortcuts, going for all sorts of things to come and please the same voter. This time we are going for elections. The goodies will have to be there. Where do you get that money from if you have not been sponsored? You have got to pay this and that. Finally, why do we pick the wrong fellows? My dear brothers and sisters, people pick the wrong fellows because these are the same fellows could be who have sponsored you and you have given them an undertaking. You sponsor me for this, I'll give you a cabinet position. You sponsor me for this, I'll give you a CEC position. Wanabaraza, you have defended the institute very well. Thank you. My dear brothers, God helping me to become the governor of Taita Taveta County. And I believe my colleagues will own up this governor. This will be their governor, right? They should own him up. I shall pick a fully qualified CPA, right? And the entire finance institute, this issue of land and the land management boards, which was there. It was there because it was supposed to serve the
Pro the change was Honorable Nair, Jojo Nair, and I had a lot of quarrels with him on this matter. Because this country, people get into committees, the parliament, people get into committees to protect their interests. If you are a land surveyor, you go to the lands committee. So that when you get there, you get your interests served. So the truth is, so long as we are not going to hold our leaders in general from across the board accountable on issue of land. By the way, land is very emotive. There are people in this country, if they don't own land, they think they are poor. I think we need to demystify and debunk this myth that you can be rich without owning land. I think that is the starting point. There are people, yes, and I was very, very vocal on certain individuals. I don't want to mention their names here now because it is irrelevant. I wanted those people to appear in Parliament and answer to questions. Then what happens? They went to the register of companies just to look if there is any company associated with me. And by the way, fortunately enough, they got some company that was dead actually. A very lazy journalists, by the way, in this country. It turned out that this was a hot political matter. Because the moment you target the DPP, you are targeting Masai. I didn't know that by the time when we were discussing that. So I didn't know we were targeting Masai. So all the people, all my colleagues who are supporting me, chickened out. On the floor of the house, I remained alone. And I was sent out. Actually, that was one of the occasions I've been sent out for being disorderly on the floor of the house. Because I felt so passionate, and the speaker refused to give me chance to speak because he knew what I was going to say. And so I decided, and by the way, that was after camping to convince me to cross. They even went to my party leader, who called me, and once I explained to him, he told me, if that is the position, that is what you saw in the committee, please go forward with it. Some minister, will also not mention name, please, if you allow me, called me from Tokyo, Japan, to tell me, Mbadi, you are chasing away Masai votes from ODM. Make sure you support that man. And I told her, you know, sorry, I've now said her. I've told her that I actually know why you want to defend him, because she had a lot of corruption cases around her that time. And I told her point blank, you know, there were some water projects that she gave me reason. She took to my constituency.
We know who she is.
She took to my. I think she thought that she had convinced me. I think now I'm already clear on who I'm talking about, but I don't think it's so. Now let me wind up, because I'm at the risk of annoying maybe some people somewhere. I don't know. What happened is I think she thought that by taking a few projects to my constituency, that I was already compromised enough for her to tell me to change my mind. I didn't change it. I remained alone, but, and this is where I want to leave it, I was so demoralized that evening as I was driving home, because immediately after Parliament, I was driving home. I'd been sent out of Parliament. I felt so demoralized because I passionately believed on this matter. Then, 2 Kenyans made my evening. Number one was a lady, and may God rest her soul in peace. She was the vice chair of the National Cohesion. She was called, I'm forgetting the first name, she's Onyango. She called me and told me, Mheshimiwa, we've watched you and we are proud of what you are doing. I'm very happy because I saw it. So we have no issues. My mind is clear.
Yes.
And finally, as I wind up, I say, whatever you do, you may think you are alone. You may think what you are doing is not so big. It's not so important to many people, but finally you may be proved right. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you so much. We do appreciate that. And unfortunately, we cannot. If you promise me, you'll say it in a minute.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. This is just a quick one. I think in between that nothing changes, something changes. Yes. Your whole life changes, the pressures are more. But your professional integrity is what will help you take you through the temptations, the paces, and I think the 2 examples we just had in terms of what the journey everybody has gone through, and some of us have gone through, is testimony to that. But more importantly, as 21,000 accountants out there, how are you insulating the few, be it 3, 4, 5, who get into that political space in Parliament? How do you insulate them from this fighting? And I think that's the parting shot. I really wanted to throw it back to you as accountants. Use social media. Use whatever avenue. Track the voting patterns. So that if you see somebody is going wayward, it's your responsibility, it's our responsibility to bring them back. Because when one accountant misbehaves in parliament, in leadership, we are all on the firing line. If we all are seen to be working together, we'll become more visible and we'll be able to agitate for more appointments for accountants, for entrenchment of your positions within the law, like we've done on a number of those things. But we cannot do that unless there's a critical mass of voices of accountants out there demanding that the members behave, demanding, supporting the issues, removing the facts from the propaganda. And when we feel supported in Parliament, as Buddy says, he was rejuvenated by the course he received, you actually work for the common good.
Certified Public Accountant Honorable John Buddy, Member of Parliament for Suba South, also Chairman of the Orange Democratic Movement Party, and current candidate for Suba South parliamentary seat. Round of applause. And finally, Certified Public Accountant, Fellow, Certified Public Accountant, Honorable Amos Kimunya, who is currently candidate for parliamentary seat of Kipipiri. Kipipiri, yes. And he's also served in various capacities as cabinet minister for over 10 years. Most recently, Minister for Transport in Kenya. Round of applause. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for making time for this session. My name is Joy Doreen Bira, business news anchor and reporter, and host of Eco Africa with Deutsche Welle. Thank you so much.
Another round of applause for the panelists. I trust that it's been an enriching session, isn't it? We leave this place rejuvenated to play our part. I know the moderator should be catching a flight back to Nairobi in the next few seconds, so I'll ask the chairman, please come up front and honor her with a memento, please, Mr. Chairman. As the chairman comes on stage, I have picked a few things about the debate we've had today. That as a people, as the body of accountants in Kenya, we need to take a stand. We need to walk the talk. We need to play our role of supporting those with political responsibility to discharge their functions effectively. Joy Doreen, please come up front to be awarded a memento by the chairman of the institute. Thank you very much, Joy Doreen, for taking us through the session well. Point number 2, we are a body of 21,000 professional accountants. Let's sing accountability. If we did it, the chorus would create an impact. Point number 3, professional accountants, you cannot continue complaining about weak accountability systems yet you maintain your positions. Please get out of your comfort zones and run for political office. Let's shape policy in Kenya. What politicians do has an economy-wide impact. We must effectively participate in it. Point number 4, that let's engage in spite of our ethical backgrounds. Let's assess each other on the strength of the character that we put out, not where we come from, not the language that we speak. If we do that, and if we talk together as accountants and Kenyans, we will go places. I think that then summarizes what the session brought out. As we end up, ladies and gentlemen, let's appreciate his memento from the chairman of the Institute, FCPA, Fernandez Barraza. Please. Absolutely, it's less than 10,000 shillings, so no declaration required. Thank you very much. CPA Amos Kimunya, in the order in which you were introduced. FCPA Amos Kimunya. Thanks very much for teaming up with us for this session. Absolutely. He says that he's a private citizen for now until August 8th. Then finally, CPA John Ngongo Mbadi. Many thanks. Can you appreciate them one more time? Can you appreciate yourselves for being attentive and interactive? Thank you very much. I invite CPA Makoha Wanjala to take us through the next steps of CPA. Oh, sorry. Tom Nyagare. Mr. Tom Nyagare, please come up front. And our panelists are free to exit the stage. Thank you. Thank you.
Let's put our hands together once more for them. A good session, energetic, and I think we've learned so much. I want now to call on stage Tim Wade, who is going to take us through a short and fiery session, motivational speaking. Tim Wade has come to the front. I request all of us put our hands together for Tim Wade. He's our speaker all the way from Singapore. We've had him speak in 2 of our events. One was in Singapore, another one in Malaysia. And I think he did a good job. And he said, can he come over and also be able to speak to more accountants during this largest professional event in Kenya. Tim Wade, karibu.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Good afternoon. First of all, can I just ask everybody here to just give yourselves a giant round of applause just for being here. I've been so inspired, I've heard so many politicians speaking that I've decided to run for government. Except then I heard the Q&A and they said what happens when you get into government, so I'm now withdrawing my candidacy immediately. Yeah, it's very, very nice to be here, and thank you for having me. I do have a very short session. In fact, my session finished 35 minutes ago, according to the program, so I'd just like to say thank you very much. Please rate it as excellent in the feedback form. I'm numbers 4 and 12. Okay. Right, let me get into it. In fact, today I'm going to talk a little bit about change, about motivating positive change, in particular in our own organizations and institutions. And I've been very privileged and fortunate to have spent this time in Kenya, and I thank you very much for having me here and giving me the opportunity actually to meet with many of you and hear some of the challenges and some of the successes and the time that you're going through at the moment, which I think is a fantastic time. Actually, given the quality of what has been discussed, the ability to speak freely about sensitive issues says a lot about where Kenya is right now and the opportunities that are ahead of you. That freedom of speech is the first step to being able to really inspire and enact positive change. And to some of the constituents I think that we heard about, this was in Savo West. And can we turn the music off? I hear some music happening at the moment. So yeah, I wanted to see the big four. That's apparently what you're supposed to see when you come here, the big four. Well, I don't know, Cheetah's part of the big four. I saw them. These are my photos that I was able to take. So I saw these guys, which was fabulous. I got to see a giraffe, which for me, seeing a giraffe in the wild, I think was just an amazing experience as well. I saw these whole family of elephants, which was also stunning. I think they're one of the big four. This guy was in Haller Park. I didn't see him really, so I had to go to Haller Park to pick up him and the hippo as well. And then I saw this guy in Mombasa. I think he's one of the big four, but the small version. He looks like he's part lion, part tiger, and part sort of leopard. He's like everything. So I feel, in some sense, I got to see the essence of it, but I will have to bring my family back to see the real deal, I think. If you will have me back, I will come, and I will bring them. And I'm already, Facebook is abuzz with some of these photos, so I'm being a little bit of a foreign ambassador for Kenya at the moment. I've had a fabulous time. So my name is Tim Wade. I learnt today that Wade, or Wade in Luo, is relative. So apparently I'm related to all of you. So I'm your brother. I'm a global conference speaker. I speak in various parts of the world. I do management development training programs, and I do change workshop facilitation for organizations, associations, and the people come up with their plans, programs, empowerment and accountability to help them drive that change. And I'm going to share some of the messages and some of the insights about how you can do it. And I'm going to make available to you resources which you can download as well, because I really do have a very short time up here. I speak all across the region. I'm from Australia, but I grew up in Malaysia. I live in Singapore, and so I think I'm from all over the place. The clients that I've worked with, these are my clients, range in industries from the government in Singapore and Dubai to organizations from the Ferraris to the prison systems and pretty much everywhere in between. And that's because the message that I talk about is motivating positive change and inspiring change from the people side. The process side we leave to the big associations. What I help with is how do we overcome resistance, how do we engage in the conversation in the organization, and then how do we get everybody on board to drive this change, to create a vision for the future where everybody comes together and is working towards that vision. And even those that were resistant or naysayers or holding back, I fly back to Singapore to my wife and daughter. I have a very young daughter. I procrastinated a lot with the whole daughter thing, the children thing, but my wife Lydia, she's from Singapore, and that's my daughter Zoe, which of course is from John 10:10, which means life, and she certainly brought a lot of life into our family. We're very grateful. So let's talk a little bit about change. Let me ask you one more time to give yourself a gigantic round of applause just for being here. Let's just hear it. Okay, that was a gigantic round of applause. Out of interest, what does a miserable round of applause sound like? That's a very miserable round of applause. Thank you. What about, that was miserable. What about a mediocre round of applause? What would that sound like? That's what I got before when I asked you a question, I think. Okay, what about a good round of applause? Good. Okay, that's a good round of applause. What about an excellent round of applause? What does that sound like? What would the round of applause sound like if Kenya scored the winning goal in the World Cup final? What would that sound like? Some people in disbelief. I said it was the winning goal. It could have been an own goal. So interesting, when I came up and I said, give yourselves a round of applause, your original round of applause was somewhere between good and mediocre. It was good and mediocre, which means our default position sometimes is average. We will perform to a level that is this average level. And we just did it ourselves. But when inspired slightly and asked to raise that level a bit, everybody was happy to do so. There was no risk, of course, in giving a giant round of applause. There was nothing against it. There was no sort of consideration of, is this, should I do this? Is this a bad thing? You were happy to do it. So how do we inspire that level of commitment and engagement in our people? Well, there's really two types of change when we really look at the changes that are happening. There's changes that we choose, and then there's changes that we don't choose. And my question to you is, which one has more resistance? Change that you choose or change that you don't choose? Which has more resistance, do you think? The change you don't choose? Yeah? Or change, okay, let me hear it. Let me just, by applause, let me hear it if it's the change you choose. Okay, the change you don't choose, by applause. Okay. Fair enough. But I mean, I've got some changes that I'm choosing. I'd like to lose some of this. I'm choosing that change, but there's still big resistance. So sometimes there is resistance to change that we choose. But yes, it is true and fair to say that there are changes that we don't choose may have slightly bigger impacts. In fact, we heard a lot of people calling for you to get involved, to be part of the change that you are choosing rather than the change that you don't choose. And just pointing fingers at that change that we don't choose. How do we get involved? Okay, but there's a couple of responses to change as well. There's the change where we take action, and there's different types of action. There's positive action, where we respond. There's negative action, where we resist. And then there's a conditioned reaction, where we sort of react, and then everything goes back to normal. But there's another response to change, and that is we don't take any action. Even when there is a vote, we don't take any action. This abdicates our responsibility for the outcome. You have elections here. In fact, I think, quite frankly, I think the problems of this entire country would be solved if EastPac was a political party and you guys just ran the entire country. How about that? Would that be a good thing? 11 people agreed. Okay. Everybody else didn't take any action. Ha-ha. All right, so I'll be very interested in hearing some of your experiences. Can everybody please find a blank piece of paper that's sitting in front of you? A blank piece of paper. Just grab a blank piece of paper and a pen. I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. I just want you to jot down your answers very, very quickly to these couple of questions. Blank piece of... And you don't have to... You can just write down the number one and then your answer to the question, because we'll know what the question is. What challenges have you experienced when leading change in the past, when you have had to lead change in the past? What are some of the challenges that you experience? Go ahead and just write down some of those challenges. You can do it in bullet points, whatever it is, just very, very quickly. Maybe we can have some nice writing down music while we're writing down these challenges. What challenges have you faced when you've had to lead change in the past? Some music? Now we can put the music up. Let's have some music. Okay, I'll do my music myself. That was a good threat, and now we got the music happening. You can bring it up a little bit more. Bring the music up a bit. Nice. What challenges have you experienced when leading change in the past? You've got 30 more seconds. Just jot down your challenges. 30 seconds left. What challenges have you experienced when leading change in the past? What were you challenged by? What was happening? People challenges, what sort of people challenges, what sort of process challenges, systematic challenges, legacy challenges, what were they? Some of them. I don't want to put words in your mouth, I want to hear what your challenges are in particular. Okay, you can finish that off whenever you can. Question 2. There's only 3 of them, okay? So question 2, so just put a big number 2 next to this next one. Question 2. What has worked well for you in the past when you were leading change? What worked well? What did you do that worked when you were leading change? And it might have been a one-off, it might have been an accident, it might have been planned, but what did you do that worked well? And what you're going to get at the end of this is 2,000 people's responses of what they did that worked well, which will help you in your next change. What has worked well for you in the past when leading change? What did you do? What did somebody else do? What worked well as you were leading this change? Go ahead and just jot that down. What worked well? Excellent. 20 seconds left. 19, 18, 17, 16, 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, let's go to the next one. Now this seems a little bit off topic, but it's important. Question 3. What factors led you to giving someone a promotion or a pay rise in the past? This is important because some of the ways that we encourage and motivate our people is through this. But why do you, in your integrity and your commitment as a leader to advance things forward, what do you look for, or what do you do? What are the factors when you give someone a promotion or a pay rise? What are some of the factors? I'm going to give that person a promotion. I'm going to give that person a pay rise. What is the factor? What are the factors that you are looking for, or that you noticed in that person? Or think about somebody that you gave a promotion, pay rise in the past to. What was it about them that you decided to give them that promotion or that pay rise? And I will share this with all of you. Okay, so you can just jot down. So the first one was the challenges, the second one was what worked well, and the third one is the promotion pay rise. Okay, 20 seconds. What factors led you to giving someone a promotion or a pay rise in the past? What are some of those factors? All right, we can cut the music. Thank you very much. All right, let's move forward. You can keep writing that out, and then at the end, it would be great if you could just leave them at the backmost table on your way out, and I can collect them from about 6 points. Okay, or you can join me over here at this table here at some particular point. All right, let's move forward. So there's a few things when leading change, and when I was motivating people through change, or taking organizations through change, or consulting to organizations to help them take through people through change. One of the ones was, I need to find out the truth. What is the truth? And it's much easier to find out the truth when you first go into an area to if you've already been there for a few years, then people don't know whether or not they can tell you the truth because of what's gone on already. So, but when you first come in, you want to know the truth. And you want to find out as much information about what's hidden under carpets or in back closets. You want to find out all of that sort of stuff so that we can enact change. And I did this at a Hong Kong electricity contact center, a customer service area, where the numbers were showing that this organization was performing better than the benchmarks around the world in their ability to service their customers, except for one small statistic, which was a little bit anecdotal, and that was all the customers were complaining. So their service level was the highest in the world, and all their customers were complaining. And when we went through what their processes were in their organization, everything was sound. All the data seemed to support their claim, except why were the people complaining? Until I dug a little bit deeper and I went to the telco level, and I found out that somebody had made the decision to only let one person into the contact center more than there were seats taking calls. So there was only ever allowed one person in the queue. Everybody else got the engaged signal. And when we got the telco to unleash the floodgates, we saw how many people really were trying to call us. So then a manager got fired because that wasn't the way it was supposed to be set up. They were claiming credit for something they didn't deserve, but we needed to know the truth. The second one, now what are the triggers to the change? Or what are the triggers to the current workload environment? We had 400,000 pieces of backlog once in a Singapore bank. I worked with them for 2 years, actually. So 6 months as a consultant outside, 12 months as a consultant directly inside, and then 6 months as a consultant outside to finish off a second project. 400,000 backlog. And the triggers were part of the triggers for the poor level of operation was the 400,000 backlog, because people had written in letters and written in emails and faxes and everything else to get service delivered, and then they were calling back to find out what had happened, sometimes 9 months later, because nothing had been happening. And so we turned it around. That Hong Kong center ended up winning regional awards for the transformation. These guys also won the regional awards as well. And it's because of what the people ended up implementing when we were able to work out what was triggering the problem. And the triggers are usually multiple levels away from what we can immediately see. So we need to dig a little bit deeper when we're looking at some of the change or even some of the activities that people are complaining about. Then culture, and we heard about this during the Q&A just now, that changing the culture is partly the most challenging part, because the way that things have worked is the way that it has become, and it's been socialized as being acceptable. And we've heard that in the discussion just before, but also how do we change that culture? How do we change corporate values, let alone national values? How do we change corporate values? And we did this once with a Singapore retail organization where they actually wanted to change their values. One of them was changing it from customer being first. In a sales organization, customer first is a very easy thing to say. They changed it from customer first to their employees first, which was a very strange shift unless you worked out why they did that. Because by doing employees first, they would lower attrition, increase engagement, and increase joy at work, which would translate to a customer experience that would put the customers first. I mean, that was kind of right. So they ended up with a customer focus. But changing their corporate values as well was another big issue. Then I got some data, and I'm going to share some data with you as well. If I was asked you to think about this question, what training or skills do managers need regarding whatever change is before you in your organization? What training or skills do managers need? And you just have a think about it. You don't have to write it down, but just have a think. What skills do they need? Well, when I asked this question of retail organizations in Singapore to management, and they need some skills to be able to do that as well. These guys in the retail in that part of the world were saying, we need leadership training, we need people management skills. How do we give performance feedback? How do we help people grow? How do we give feedback in a way that's not just going to make everybody angry and walk away? And we need effective communication skills. Then I ask you this question. How can we better embrace change initiatives this coming year? I asked this question to a group of people as well. How do we better embrace change initiatives in this coming year? Have a think about that. What do you need to do? What did the organization do to better embrace change initiatives? And by the way, these are great questions to ask your teams, to ask people in your organization, or when you're running workshops. You can ask these very questions. You'll get all these slides, so you can ask these very questions. They're very good questions to ask. I asked this to a business equipment manufacturer and marketer in Japan and in Singapore. Here's what they answered to that particular one. One of the things they needed is they needed to be open to the change. That was mindset, attitudes, values and behaviors, 32%. They need to be open to the change. Monetary incentives were there as number 2. Pay us and we will go through the change. That usually means that there is a morale issue and people are saying, well, I don't really want to be here, but I'll do it if you pay me, which means you've got something else you would need to fix. There is a trigger. If people are complaining about the money, unless there's not parity economically across competitors, then that is probably more a morale issue. And you can check that by absenteeism rates and attrition rates as well. And then they had leadership and team issues, 16%. Better communication, 14%. There are some themes coming up. One of the quotes that somebody said was, top management talk about it, but they don't really want to do it themselves. So they go, yes, this is what we should do. And everyone claps, and then nothing happens. Or they don't lead from the top. HR managers in India, I asked them, what challenges have you experienced when leading change in the past? Similar question I asked you. Poor leadership, communication, and alignment, nearly half, 42%. Resistance to the change was 33%. Strangely enough, poor leadership led over resistance to change. That means people didn't trust their leaders, or they didn't get the information, and that also comes out in lack of engagement or complacency. People are like, well, we don't really need to change, so it doesn't really matter, so it doesn't really have to happen now. Let's just keep things the way that they are so we don't change anything, because I've finally worked out this system, and if we change between people in your organization, whether they're superiors, whether they're other people, interdepartmental, what interpersonal challenges do you face? Here's what people from here said. 23% said communication challenges, communication problems. Second one might give us some idea about what that meant. Attitude, 14%. People, when they were communicating with them, there was anger, people were being temperamental, there was fear to communicate, and they were being judged for being the bringer of bad news to a degree. That's CEOs and chairmen. We're finding that when they're speaking with others outside the organization or within. Leadership issues. Some of the interpersonal ones, they're talking with people, and there's leadership issues. That is capability. 9% said that. Managing expectations was another one. So that you're seeing the numbers are smaller because it's a bit broader here. But managing expectations effectively, 8%. How do I manage expectations of my organization, of the board? And then others included things like lack of trust. People didn't trust. Low confidence, impatience, and ego, pride, and selfishness as well. Coming from leaders. Thinking that they're important because they have the role, not they've been given a mandate to deliver the value or the promise. That's why they got the role. So then they end up, basically, a bunch of people, this was in Haller Park as well, this was quite a cool photo. They're all snapping away, they've got interpersonal challenges, communication challenges, there's fear, they feel like you bring bad news, there's selfishness, it's stepping over top of the other one to get higher. There were some challenges as well. Finally, I asked the HR managers in India, what worked well for you in the past when leading change? 37% said communication was the key. When we communicated effectively about what the change was and why we were doing it, and very, very importantly, what the future vision looks like and what the opportunity is if we go through this. But theirs was about communication, and that was broken down to personal. So there was one-on-one communication, when somebody was coming up to you and explaining to you why, and having that conversation one-on-one. Not just going out and doing, okay guys, here's what we're going to do, and then walk off. There was the one-on-one and addressing particular objections, and that also got them closer to the floor to understand what some of the real concerns were. There were group and unspecified as well, with 16%. But communication was important. And secondly, very, very important, was leadership by example. Seeing people lead by example. Walking the talk. We heard a clarion call for that as well. Walk the talk. You say you're going to do it, or what we're going to do, and when we heard top managers talk about it, but they don't want to do it. How do we be the vanguards? That's the theme of this. Professionals who are the vanguards. Now, vanguard, I mentioned it the other night, tongue in cheek. What is the meaning of a vanguard? Actually, the French word avant-garde comes from vanguard. It's that in the forefront, leading the change, being the one that's out there, championing it, making it happen, inspiring and motivating that change as well. You could also think it's a guy that guards your van. But we'll go with the ones that are avant-garde and leading the change. So yeah, leading by example. And then there was engagement, having change agents around us. They're the ones that really understand why. And I'll show you a couple of steps as to how to get this happening. Engagement, change agents, and then of course coaching and feedback, which I was surprised to see that so high, but I was really pleased to see it so high because it is extremely effective. You're being able to be managers, leaders as coaches. Whether you've got nobody reporting to you, but you're in part of a team, you can still lead, coach, give feedback, and be that vanguard in Kenya, in the industry, in your organization. Create involved advocates was one of the quotes I quite liked. So I want to just do a very, very quick exercise where you turn to the person next to you. Just turn to the person next to you, and if there's two people next to you, which there probably is, and if there's nobody next to you, find somebody. But I want you to turn to the person next to you, and I want you to exchange with them positive feedback. Give them some positive feedback about anything. So give them like, I really like the way that you've been taking notes throughout this entire time. I love the way that you've always been here and keeping me awake. I like whatever it is. I like the way that you wear your glasses. Whatever. Turn to the person next to you, give them some positive feedback. Go ahead, go. Some positive feedback. Find somebody else. If there's somebody sitting alone, go and give them some positive feedback. Okay. Quick question. Did you like getting positive feedback? Did you like giving positive feedback? So why don't you do it more often? It's true. Is change... would we largely say, is change fun or stressful? Is change fun? Let me hear about it. Is change fun? Is change stressful? Okay. You guys love stress, it sounds like. It's fun and stressful. Okay. Yeah, so a lot of people would say that change can be stressful. And when we lead people through change, it's very, very important that we create that sense of fun, but we also continue to give them positive feedback. Because usually change is they're doing something different, they're trying something new. Some of you have been like sort of sitting there and that fire of inspiration is burning inside you to join government. That maybe some of you have been, that fire of inspiration is to say, I'm going to step up and I'm going to start taking a bit of action about X, Y, and Z, whatever it is happening in my organization or my community. Whatever it is. There'll be times when there's pushback. We heard it from the panel just now. They wanted to puncture you, to slow you down. There's a bit of pushback. But we've got to keep going. And it's that values in the integrity of your association membership and the qualifications that it means. By getting those qualifications, it means you've gone through a number of hoops and hurdles to be able to get to this level. So here's some key questions I ask in change workshops. And I'll explain very quickly why, and I'll go through this fairly quickly as well. But we can give more positive feedback because people need to hear it. Because they know that they've made mistakes during change. They need to hear the positive feedback. In fact, we even heard the panel just before saying, you got to support us when we're going through all of this sort of stuff. They need to hear the positive support and feedback. Here are some key change questions I asked during the workshops that I'm involved in, and these are great questions for you to ask if you want them yourselves. Huge question to ask. What is the vision and the opportunity? What is the vision and the opportunity? Where do we want to get to by going through this change? What is the opportunity if we do it? What is the possibility for Kenya? What is the possibility for our community? What's the possibility for our organization? Even just for our team. If we go through this, what's the possibility? What's the vision? And you paint the picture of what life will be like at the other side of the change. Because the change will be a bit messy, but when we get there, it'll be much better. Make sense? I believe Haller Park was named Haller Park by a guy called Dr. Haller, who came up with the idea of turning a big empty hole into a nice park. Is that right? So he had this vision of what it could look like. Now we'll go through some time where it didn't look that great. And his legacy becomes that to some degree. I don't know much about his other story. But that's, I mean, he said, this is where we are, but that's where we could get to. We could create this. And then it's lobbying for that, making that change possible. What's the vision and the opportunity? Then, what is good or positive or beneficial about these changes? Now, this is really important to create a foundational ground, I guess a foundation, to create this foundation of this is a good thing to do. It's a fantastic question to ask. And some people go, yeah, but the problem is, you go, no, not yet. Not yet. Hold your problem till later. Just come up with what's good or positive, beneficial about the changes. And then, why is the change urgent? Why does it have to be now? Because if it's not urgent, but it's a good thing to do, then we're not going to be bothered doing it. So we've got to come up with a sense of urgency. Sometimes we need to identify what is the threat. So for example, and I mentioned this the other night, if I was looking at where Kenya is in the entire African continent, I would want Kenya to be the absolute global hub of Africa. I want people to think that. No, I mean, thank you. That's if I was running Kenya. I mean, if I was running Ghana, I would say the same thing about Ghana. So I'm going to put that in. But if I was running Kenya, I want Kenya to be the absolute global. When people think Africa, they will travel through, they will think business, everything, they will think Kenya. Make sense? Same thing with Singapore and its region. Same thing with Dubai, what they've created as a hub in their region. Why not Kenya? Why not here? So I'll be thinking that's the vision and the opportunity. Why is it urgent? Because if we don't do it, our neighbors may. If we don't do it, somebody else may. Aha. He wants me to be president. Okay, well, maybe a little bit later. So then finally, what are the risks and challenges that we face during the changes? This is where all the naysayers or the people who are concerned about some of the risks which have genuine concern can have their say. And we capture all of these and we list all of these. Fantastic questions to ask. But the other thing to do is, like I mentioned before, is to make it fun. How can we also make it fun? In some of the organizations that we ran change through, where we didn't have customer-facing areas, for example, we made the environment fun because we couldn't make the work fun or the interactions fun. Some of them were actually very negative as we were going through them. So we tried to make the environment fun. I had initiatives of let's decorate stuff or whatever it was. Let's just make it fun so that when people come in, they go, wow, this is a great place to be. If we had any competitions or anything like that to just keep that morale up, at the time that we're going through stressful change, those competitions, I always ran them on high absenteeism days, usually like a Monday. High absenteeism, usually Monday, Friday, and immediately before or after a public holiday, right? And Monday was usually our busiest day, and that's when people were, I don't want to go to work. So I'd run all the cool initiatives on the Monday. The fun stuff will be on the day that then people would like, well, I don't want to miss the fun things, so I'm going to turn up to work today. We increase capacity very, very quickly. Then the other thing this was a pretty cool one. This was during Christmas celebration. We got everyone decorating their areas Christmas, and the team that